I run a company called FutureGov, and our main focus is local government. So we work with cities, counties, and small local authorities to work at ground level. And these are the things we believe in, really, and this is how our company's structured. We have a service design team, and a product design team, and an organisation design team. What's interesting about the organisation design team is a kind of fairly new team for us, because what we found we were doing was creating really interesting services that were really solving problems and building technology products that were supporting those services. And then we would kind of go, here's the thing, we've made it, and it would kind of fall flat, because what we learned is we're dealing with public institutions that are kind of, in some cases, sort of centuries old, certainly founded on decades-old principles, and they're not designed to be able to make a success of this kind of innovation. So what we've started to think about is, how do we design organisations? How do we design public services as a whole so they're able to make a success of emerging technologies, different ways of doing things, and service design in particular? And I think what makes us unique is the kind of the bringing together of those three designs, and it's something that we really believe in. These are some products that we've made. I'll just focus on a couple. Casserole is a community meal sharing network. So if you're cooking and you have a spare plate or you chuck in an extra portion, we'll match you with an older person who lives near you. You take the food round, you have a cup of tea, you check they're okay. You can do it once and never again, or you can do it on an ongoing basis, and we find people tend to do it on an ongoing basis. And then Patchwork is a tool that solves a problem where if you're a social worker and you go into a family for the first time to work with them, you have no way of knowing who else from which other public agency is also working with your family. So with Patchwork, you'll type in the name of your client and their contact details, and then you'll see anyone else who's also working with them. It's kind of like a supercharged phone directory, but believe it or not, it doesn't already exist. So those are our two kind of most prominent products. So alongside our service design, we also build things as well. At least one of these three things is a travesty. It's not just to be dramatic, but things are unprecedented, right? We live in crazy changing times, and I think our responses need to match the intensity of the times that we're living in. And I think that's kind of like one of the themes that I want to get across today. Is like, we can't just sit back and pretend things are normal, because they're not, and our responses have to be just as dramatic as the turbulence that we're living amongst. So everyone loves a listicle, so I made a listicle of the 4 ways that the country is in a sort of pivotal moment. Look at this map. Half the country wants something that the other half doesn't. I'm talking about Brexit, for those who haven't conveniently forgotten that moment in history. And it doesn't, in or out or whatever, it's not really about that, right? Brexit is the symptom of the fact that half the country wants something that the other half doesn't. As we talk, let's think about how can design help with that? How can design start to help bridge that divide? Racism. It's bad enough that it might happen in private, and now it's openly happening on our streets. It's not okay and it's not acceptable. How can design play a role in putting a stop to that and take responsibility for some of that? Like, what is all of our part in changing that? There's nothing, right? Nature hates a vacuum. So what happens when there's a vacuum? Kind of other forces sweep in. So design could be one of those forces. So how about we make that happen rather than waiting for other more sinister forces to sweep in? And also, and I think this is really important to remember, and I imagine there are some people here who can cast their minds back and others who can't, but the roots of all of what we're seeing today go back a long way. It's not like this is an overnight thing that's just happened and all of a sudden we've woken up as this divided country. These divisions have been a long time in the making, perhaps even longer ago than this, which is 1984, ironically. So what we're looking at is some kind of deep-seated, entrenched wicked problems that we need to address. Nothing is better placed to address those problems than design, because design can deal with complexity, design can deal with constraints, design has empathy, so we're all ideally placed to be the people solving these problems. So this is my kind of call to arms, that we all, at least all of us, leave this room vowing to do something about some of this, even in our own small way. Also, if you're designing from London, you're not pushing yourself, you're not challenging yourself enough. There are fewer constraints here. You're around people who will pat you on the back and say your idea is brilliant. It'll totally work in London. Well, of course it will. But London isn't where a lot of the problems that exist and have kind of come to light recently. That's not the locus of those problems. So get out of London. Go and spend a couple of weeks in cities around the country, or better still, in rural villages, places where where things aren't happening, where you can't have the comfort of Uber and Deliveroo and all the rest of it, because that's where the real change and real work of design needs to be done. If you're going to tinker around the edges, don't bother, okay? It's not rewarding, it's not worth doing, and our problems are bigger than tinkering. We have to grab this opportunity because time's running out. These things are really important and pressing. Whatever you do, make it good, make it big, be ambitious, try and take on a big thing rather than being overwhelmed and intimidated by it, even though these problems are incredibly intimidating. As I've said all along, designers have the power to do this. They have a key role to play in this. And I think if designers kind of sit back and let it happen, then the world will be missing something really important. Designers have good networks. They know each other and know how to network with people. They have the skills and the tools to do it. You all know what those are. Crucially, they have the empathy. Designers are very empathic, I find. They want to understand what it is that's somebody's motivation. Do your user research. Spend time to understand the problem. That's what designers do so brilliantly, and that's what we need right now, empathy, compassion for each other, but also guts, right? We need to be a bit ballsy about this. We need to take the bull by the horns. We need to do something radical, and designers have that too in spades. This is my final message. This is difficult. It's easy to kind of stand on a stage and say, hey, do all the radical things, but it's so hard, and it's so exhausting sometimes. But please don't give up trying, because if we all gave up, then, well, where would we be? Support each other, support yourselves in what you're doing, but please never, ever give up.